Item 1, presentation to Police Chief Brian Gillard by the North Carolina Committee, support of the Guard and Reserve. At this time, we'll turn it over to who's handling it?
How you doing?
Come in.
He's not here yet. I don't know if there's a sign or anything there. The chief press is going outside to look for it.
Do what, sir?
They're not here right
Press is
now.
going outside to look for it.
Okay, we'll continue that. Item 2 is proclamation observing Black History Month. I have a proclamation I'd like to read. Whereas as noted historian Dr. Carter G. Woodson announced the second week of February as Negro History Week in 1926 in order to increase public awareness and appreciation of the important role that the African Americans have played in shaping America's history, and whereas the United States government officially recognized Negro History Week in 1976 as part of the U.S. bicentennial, expanding it to Black History Month. Whereas America is a melting pot of cultures and all part of the land of the free, Black History Month fosters cultural awareness and understanding while encouraging education, contributions made by the Americans of color. Whereas the omission of much of the history and contributions of African Americans from the textbooks and other literature has impeded awareness and appreciation. And whereas the celebration of Black History Month is a positive way of recognizing the culture and the history of the African American as vital to the core beliefs and values of this society. And whereas the contribution of African Americans have been vital to the growth and development of the city of Monroe. Now therefore, I, Bobby Kilgore, by the virtue of the authority vested in me as the mayor of the city of Monroe, do hereby proclaim and observe February 2016 as Black History Month, and encourage the local citizenry to participate in activities that foster awareness and appreciation of the African American contributions to shaping the history of Monroe, Union County, North Carolina, and America. And witness hereof, I have hereunto set my hand and cause the seal of the city of Monroe to be affixed this 19th day of January 2016. And most, if not all, know that we have just had the Martin Luther King weekend. I had a parade, lots of meetings, preaching, and so forth. Had a good weekend with that, and I think several of us attended those meetings. It was a good meeting. Okay, at this time we'll go to the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mayor, members of City Council.
Sorry, real quick, Mayor. I'd like to pull item number 6 off on the consent agenda for discussion.
Number 6.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Go ahead and come back to that.
City Council uses the consent agenda to consider items that are non-controversial and routine. The consent agenda is acted upon by one motion and vote of council. Items may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda at the request of a council member or citizen with the consent of council. The consent agenda contains 6 items as just amended. Item number 3 under consent is the approval and acceptance of minutes and reports. There are 15 sets of minutes lettered A through N. Item 3.0 concerns disbursement of fiscal year 2015 through 2016 City Council discretionary funds. Council members are provided $3,000 each on an annual basis for disbursement at their discretion towards items that meet the public purpose definition of permitted items that a municipality is authorized to perform. There are 2 sets of disbursements to be reported. The first is Mayor Kilgore had 2 disbursements, first of which for Martin Luther King prayer breakfast in the amount of $15, and secondly, for the Union County NAACP banquet in the amount of $25. Second said disbursements involved Councilmember Anthony. Disbursement was for Martin Luther King prayer breakfast in the amount of $15. Item 3P involves the Finance Committee reports for December 2015. And just summarizing two key elements, the unassigned general fund balance was $7.3 million and change as of December 31st. And the total fund balance was $27 million and change for the same period. Item 3Q is notification of award of contract for a 1 3/4 ton tool truck for the engineering department, street division. This is for the purpose of complying with section 34.01 of the Municipal City, Monroe City Code, which requires council to be notified for apparatus purchases less than $100,000. The lowest priced responsive bid was submitted by Capital Ford in the amount of $55,216. Item 3R is summary of contracts awarded, change orders approved, and city manager's settlement of claims and city manager's discretionary fund. There were no claims settled nor expenditures of the manager's discretionary funds during this period. And the number of contracts awarded were 29, $447,000 and change. Item 4 under consent is the award of contract for Arrow Point Phase 2 water line extension to state utility contractors. This is for the purpose of considering the award of this water main contract to serve the new API powdered metal facility involving 2,000 linear feet of 12-inch main and appurtenances. There were 2 responses from a possible 6 qualified contractors. Staff recommended the low bidder, the state utility contractor, in the amount of $171,000. Item 5 under consent is the budget. There's 3 sets of budget amendments. First of which is accepting funds from the 2015 Industry Appreciation Event sponsors. The amount is $6,250 for additional sponsorship revenue, which exceeded the forecasted budget of amount of $10,000. The second set of budget amendments is for budget compliance for the current fiscal year. For the purpose of making multiple budget amendments for unanticipated activities that are summarized as follows. The first is 5, is in the amount of $2,770 for annual maintenance in the payment center. The second is in the amount of $34,515 for writing off 2 rehabilitation loan receivables that were maintained by the Monroe Housing Authority. The third is in the amount of $22,000 in change and $7,500, which recognizes funds repaid from 2 customers that had participated in the city's down payment assistance program as a result of property sale, and the other amount concerned not closing on their loan. The balance in the down payment assistance program after receipt of these 2 sets of funds increases to $68,816. The fourth item under 5B is in the amount of $24,000 to offset unanticipated service charges from Wells Fargo associated with our main operating account. The fifth and final under 5B is in the amount of $236,000 to cover credit card service fees associated with processing customer utility payments by credit card. Item 5C, budget amendment, is for the purpose of accepting $150 from Advanced Driver Training Services, Inc. The amount of $150. And the police department intends to use these funds for youth programs. The item that was numbered, item 7, is a call for public hearings to be held February 2nd, 2016. This is for the purpose of requesting council to call 3 public hearings to consider and take action on zoning map amendment requests for properties located at 501 Charles Street from residential single-family R10 to conditional district Bartell. The second public hearing being called is at 1502 Concord Avenue from general business to conditional district BV Auto Sales, and the third is located at 1959 Old Charlotte Highway from conditional district Cochelle property to conditional district Cochelle property amendment 1. Item 8 concerns capital project budget ordinance for the Monroe Bypass Natural Gas Relocation Project. This is for the purpose of increasing project funds by $281,000 and change to support in support of utility relocation reimbursement expenses associated with the Monroe Bypass involving these 3 corridors: the Austin Cheney Road at a little more than $6,000, East Road at $122,000, and Rocky River Road at $152,000 and change. Item 9 under consent involves an ordinance amending the 2015-2016 fee schedule to add credit card convenience fee charges. This is for the purpose of amending the city's fee schedule to add a charge for credit card convenience fees to reduce the city's anticipated annual loss of more than $250,000 for the use of credit cards as a payment option. Last year's expense was approximately $115,000. However, the city has observed increased card usage by customers as a means of payment due in part to the loyalty benefit programs offered by major credit card companies. Mayor, members of the City Council, this concludes my summary of those items offered to you.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Hearing none, that's passed. Item 6, call for the special strategic planning meeting to be held February 16th. Mr. Anderson, I recognize you at this time.
Mayor, I'd like to have a brief discussion about changing the times for these strategic planning meetings so that we can ensure that we have a quorum and make sure that it's a good time for all of us to meet. I'd like to make a motion that we have our strategic planning meetings at 5 o'clock, 5 to 6, and then move right into the city council meeting at 6.
I'll second that.
I have a motion, and I have a second. Any discussion?
Discussion, clarification.
I'm sorry?
Is this for any strategic planning meeting that we're planning on having, or just for this one particular meeting?
This would be any strategic planning meeting.
I have a question though.
Okay.
Yes.
Sometimes our meetings last longer than an hour, so how would we entertain that?
Well, I don't, there'd have to be some adjustments, what we go in with, so we can complete it in the hour. This afternoon, we didn't have a quorum till 4:30. I mean, some of course, she was sick, and you know, everybody's got their things. That's not the deal. I just wanted to mention that. But if we change it that, I feel like we could get everyone when we go right into the council meeting. Of course, like I say, I don't know how much we can get discussed, but at the same time, we'll have to program accordingly if that's what we do.
Well, we meet twice a month, so if we don't finish it all on the first one, then we can just do it with the second one too, and then hold a meeting at 5 o'clock at that point, if that's something that needs to happen.
So let me understand that. So when we first started having the strategic planning meetings, they were just scheduled for the first Tuesday of each month.
That's my understanding.
And so what we're saying now is that rather than trying to accommodate, you know, the agenda items that we normally would not rather do at a regular meeting, we're going to try to schedule 2 strategic planning meetings a month for an hour rather than scheduling one on the first Tuesday and allow whatever time we need to try to accommodate those items. I just want
Maybe I misunderstood it wrong.
I don't know, this is the second Tuesday of the month, and nobody showed up for the 3 o'clock meeting today, except for 3 people.
Okay. Well, I'm just trying to, again, when we originally started the strategic planning meeting, it was supposed to be for the first Tuesday. And now it appears that every month we're having one on the first Tuesday and the third Tuesday. So I'm just trying to determine, and it worked good for us when we were doing it just on the first Tuesday. Every now and then we would have to schedule a special one for for the third Tuesday. So I'm just trying to make sure that I understand that we are going from a long-standing practice of moving our strategic planning meeting from the first Tuesday to every Tuesday that the city council meets.
Well, is that?
I would hope that, if you don't mind me speaking here before you get in, I would hope that we're not scheduling 2 strategic planning meetings a month. I believe that we can still accomplish what we need to do in one meeting. This happened to be a special called meeting anyway, just for the month of February, and I would hope going forward, you know, we're into the budgetary time period, and we might have to be more right, but I wouldn't think that we would need to meet twice a month for 12 months on strategic planning, no.
Well, I wouldn't think so, but that's what I'm hearing.
Mayor, can I get a clarification as well? Because I think Councilmember Jordan's raised the concern I would have is the motion to reschedule any strategic meeting that is currently on the agenda, on the schedule you adopted in December, to make all the strategics to move to 5 o'clock that are on that schedule.
Right.
All right, now is that for just one meeting a month, or is that the?
Well, the reason I even said anything about the second meeting is when Miss Anthony says, what if we didn't get through with the first meeting? Usually we would, but if we needed to, then it's up to the city manager to schedule another meeting, if that's something that
If
we
it
need to
were
do.
needed.
If it were needed. That doesn't mean that it's going to happen every month.
Well, I would note one thing is the manager does not schedule the meeting. Only the council can schedule those meetings. The manager would request it of you, and you would make the determination as to whether or not to add a special called meeting then, unless it's already on your schedule. I'll defer to the clerk as to what the schedule says, because you do have some meetings where, as Councilmember Jordan's pointed out, there's only one strategic a month, and that there have been some that have been added. For example, the one on this was added for budget purposes, but that's why I sought the clarification of if it's for all.
So do you want to schedule one meeting a month then? Of course, now when we start doing these budget schedules, that's gonna increase another day at some point, because we're gonna have to talk about the budget. And this first Tuesday that we've been doing, we haven't done that for the budget particularly. Now, we have done it some, but it's the second meeting where we've been, that's call meeting to discuss the budget. And such thing as health insurance, which comes into the budget. So therefore, you want to do it, are you making the motion to do it one Tuesday, the first Tuesday? And then if we need a second meeting for strategic planning for the budget or whatever, call it for the second meeting? Is that what?
Yes.
You can always do that. You can always add it to the regular agenda, like we're doing right now. You can always add it to a regular council meeting. I mean, we can do whatever we want.
Okay.
Well, I mean, ultimately, the bottom line is we want everybody to be able to participate in these strategic planning meetings. I mean, the way it went today, it just so happened that I had the day off and could be there at 3, and that Mayor Pro Tem Duncan's law school class got canceled and she could be there at 3. Had that not have happened, we'd have only had the mayor present at the strategic planning meeting. I just don't think that looks good from a council standpoint, that we would have had a meeting with no council members there but the mayor, because you can't vote on anything. So, I want it where we're all there and we all hear what's going on, so that we can do what we need to do within that time frame.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed?
No,
Did you say?
said no.
Okay, we go to the regular agenda at this time. Item 10, zoning map amendment request for property located at 718 North Charlotte Avenue.
Mayor, one thing though, going back to the item, Councilmember Anderson's motion was only to change the strategic meetings that are currently on the agenda. You did not call for a special meeting on the 16th. If the intent of the council is to have a special strategic planning meeting on the 16th at 5 p.m., you still have to call for that. You have not done that yet.
Was that the attempt, was you doing that for the attempt to call for the 16th? I didn't hear that.
Any of
Even
them
if
going,
that-
I was attempting to call it for any of them going forward.
That would be up to Larry.
Actually, no, with all due respect, the motion modified the current schedule. It did not add a meeting. It did not subtract a meeting. It modified the schedule for strategic. Therefore, if you wish to hold a meeting on February 16th, you need to take action to do so, because it is not on your schedule.
Item 6 was to add a call meeting.
To add one and make it at 4 o'clock also, and we're only addressing one issue of the two.
Item 6 has not been addressed.
Right.
Be
Well-
specific.
Larry, do you need the meeting on the 16th?
Yes. Later on in the meeting, I was going to ask y'all to cancel the strategic that has already been called for the 2nd. If you want to take care of that now, canceling the 2nd and scheduling one, calling a meeting, special strategic meeting for the 16th. That would be my recommendation.
So moved.
You got a motion? Have a motion, second?
And then just for clarification, that's a special meeting on the 16th at 4 p.m.
5 p.m.
At 5 p.m. Okay.
Okay, I have a motion, do I have a second? Second. All in favor? Any opposed? Hearing none, okay. That takes care of that. Now we back to the regular agenda, item 10. Zoning amendment request.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Doug Britt in the Planning Department. And tonight I'm here to present a zoning map amendment for the property located at 718 Charlotte Avenue. The applicant, Mr. Cruz, is requesting to rezone the subject property from GB General Business to Conditional District 718 North Charlotte Avenue. Subject property is highlighted in blue. The ranching site is located on Charlotte Avenue, and that would be the railroad trestle going across overpass. Property is on GB General Business, and the adjoining properties are GI, General Industrial, as well as GB also.
What's it, 718 now?
That's that, as soon as you go, tracks above you, first, above on the right-hand side,
As soon as you go by what, I didn't miss
it's right
it.
there. As soon as you go out Charlotte Avenue and you'll go under the railroad tracks, and it's the building on the right-hand side right there. That's just a picture of it. The building was built in 1950, and it's approximately 1,600 square feet. And the use was an existing non-conforming use, which meant that it was it's been there for some time. And what happened as far as the use was vacated for a period of time, and once that use is vacated for more than 180 days or 6 months, at that point from there on, it cannot be used except for conforming purposes. The applicant, Mr. Cruz, is requesting to utilize the property for automotive repair again. And like I said, it's been automotive at least back till, as far as we can see, from through HC to 1997, and it was vacated in the beginning of 2014. Like I said, the applicant's requested to utilize it for automotive uses as well, and it would just be for repair shop at this location. The plan board did recommend approval of it, and I'll be glad to answer any questions. As with the rezoning, just remind you, you need to adopt a resolution of plan compliance that was forwarded from the plan board. At this time, I'll be glad to answer any questions, and as well, Mr. Cruz is here, as well as his agent, Mr. Jess Perry, to answer your questions also.
Any questions?
Just a question, Mayor. I know at some time that there was some discussion about city purchasing that property and an adjacent property to try to tie in Charlotte Avenue with our Beltane Park. And is the staff aware of any discussions that have gone along those lines anytime recently?
Staff's not aware. I'll refer to Brian.
Mr. Jordan, we were working with Ms. Sykes at the neighboring property that's tied up in a family matters uptown, with her being in a care facility.
Oh, so
That
this
was the
property.
only property we were kind of working on.
So this property here is not one that we had an interest in?
Not in recent time, not in my memory.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, sir. I have Mr. Perry and Mr. Cruz sign up to speak. If you folks like to speak, this is a public hearing.
Mr. Mayor, good evening. Council members, good evening. My name is Jess Perry. I'm with Law Perry Realty, and we represent the property owners, Don and Vicki Cuthbertson, at 718 Charlotte Avenue. And Mr. Cruz here has been waiting a long time to get in as a tenant. Long time. What happened with the property is Mr. Cuthbertson turned the power over in his name, and he is a very active landlord in his properties. He himself gets in and does a lot of the work on improvements on his properties. An example, he owns a number of properties here in Monroe, over off of Dickerson Boulevard, off of Walkup, very nice industrial buildings, the post office building, and a tire place over on Dickerson Boulevard. Give you an example, the old Malek building, if you've driven by there recently, you'll see the improvements that have been made on that. It's amazing. Mr. Don Cuthbertson personally participates in this. And that's why when the last tenant was in this building, Mr. Cuthbertson himself became involved in making improvements on this property. It was about $15,000, a little over $15,000 that he did to tidy up the place. And that's why it's gone this long. He just simply turned the power over in his name. Mr. Cruz would like to get in there and start his business in auto repair, and that's why we're here today. So we would like to ask for approval for conditional use. And if you have any questions for me or Mr. Cruz, we'll be happy to answer them.
Any questions? Apparently not. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here who would like to speak in opposition? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and take action.
Like motion to approve?
Second.
With the resolution.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Hearing none, that'll pass.
Best of luck to you, Mr. Cruz.
Item 11, the Community Development Grant. There's a public hearing. Lisa?
Good evening, Lisa Stywinner, Planning Director with the City of Monroe. I would like to bring before Council a request to conduct a public hearing to consider the closeout for the Community Development Block Grant, the 2012 Scattered Site Grant Program. The City of Monroe, in partnership with Monroe Union County Community Development Corporation on behalf of Union County, was awarded a 2012 CDBG Scattered Site Grant in the amount of $225,000. Funding was provided by the North Carolina Department of Commerce Division of Community Investment and Assistance. The 2012 Scattered Site Grant Program provided funding for housing rehabilitations throughout communities in Union County. The funds were used to assist 7 low to moderate income families with housing rehabilitation. This is the grant that the city has been administering for years on behalf of Union County. Staff recommends council conduct the public hearing and close out the CDBG 2012 Scattered Site Grant Program as submitted, as well as de-obligate the remaining $58,499.43. I'll be happy to answer any questions, and Isabel Gillespie and Bernice Lindsay with Monroe Union County CDC is here to answer any questions as well.
Council have any questions?
Just a quick question. Why are we having to de-obligate $58,000?
We had 9 homes on the list for rehabilitation. 2 of them were not able to be completed. I think one was, once the inspection was conducted, the cost ended up being too much for rehabilitation. The Scattered Site Housing Program, you're only allotted $30,000 per home. I believe that's right, $30,000 for rehabilitation per home, and then one applicant decided not to proceed with their application. This year's grant cycle was a little bit different in the requirements, where we were not required to do the environmental studies in advance. We were allowed to move forward with the grant and then do the environmental. After being within the grant cycle, there wasn't enough time to do any additional environmental to add houses. And Isabel and Bernice might be able to add any additional information that I may not have provided. I'm not sure.
Tag team.
Yes.
Yes. My name is Isabel Gillespie. I'm the Executive Director of Monroe Union County CDC. With the Union County Scattered Site Grant, one of the conditions is we have an assistance policy. And during that assistance policy, you have such a short period of time to do your application. And so prior to submitting the grant itself, you submit all of the applicants that applied during that application period. And so during that period, we only had 9 to apply. And so 2 of them, one was over the cost was over the program guidelines. And as Lisa stated, the other client decided not to proceed with the program. So we only had 7 clients at that time. And so that left a reserve that we have to hopefully, at the conclusion of this public hearing, de-obligate so we can close out the application and the grant.
So we're not allowed to seek any type of waiver from the state so that we could try to accommodate 2 other people who were on the reserve list. I know we had a long waiting list for these monies, and I understand what you're saying, that with the grant, you have to go ahead and send in the addresses of the people that you hope to work with.
The state has been, in the beginning of the process, stated that they would not be doing any extensions with this particular grant. I think they're trying to close out, and I believe they will no longer be offering this particular program.
I understand that. That's why it bothers me that we've got $58,000 of
Yes.
funds going back to the state that are sorely needed here.
I agree.
For the rehab of housing.
There's definitely a need, but the program guidelines
I
just,
understand.
thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to speak in favor? Anyone who'd like to speak in opposition? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and take action.
So moved.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Have a motion, and a second, all in favor? Any opposed? Hearing none, passes.
Mayor,
Yes,
also like to commend Ms. Gillespie for the outstanding job she does.
yeah, okay, very good. All right, we'll go back to item 1, presentation to the police. Brian Gillard by the North Carolina Committee for Employer Support and Guard and Reserve. At this time, we recognize you, sir.
Thank you, commissioners and city council members. I'm glad to be here, and I do apologize for being tardy. I was born and raised here in Monroe, but I came from Salisbury and got caught in traffic, so I won't take but 2 minutes of your time. Glad to be back home, believe it or not. But I'm Jim Rory. I'm a volunteer with the North Carolina Committee for Employer Support of the Guard Reserve. Basically what we do is provide free education, consultation, and if necessary, mediation for Guard and Reserve members and their civilian employers in the event that they may have a conflict with being allowed time off to perform their military duties from their civilian employment. At either's request, we'll come in as a neutral third party and try to help resolve any conflicts without it escalating to the Department of Defense. That's one of the things we do, and probably one of the most important. The other thing, and the most rewarding on my behalf, and I've been a volunteer since 1986, I spent 37 years in the military, is we have an awards program where Guard and Reserve members can nominate their civilian employers for recognition by our committee and by the Department of Defense for the support that they provide their military members while serving and performing military duties. Command Sergeant Phil Presley, or Assistant Chief Presley, I guess as you all know him, took that opportunity to submit Chief Gilliard's name to be recognized for the support that he's given him. And before I present the award to him, I'd like to read what Assistant Chief Presley wrote about him. It says, Chief Brian Gilliard has never served in the military services, but he supports and respects military veterans just as much as any other. I would rank Chief Gilliard's support along with the City Council of the City of Monroe at a level as high as any organization in the United States. I have been employed with the City of Monroe's Police Department for 28 years, and there has not been one single incident or issue concerning my obligations to the military, be it drill, annual training, state active duty, or Title X deployments. During military events that take me out of town for periods of time, regardless, I have the gratification knowing that even though I still worry that my family will be taken care of should they come the time of need, Chief Gilliard stays in contact with my family and ensures that any and all issues are handled in my absence. After I was promoted to Command Sergeant Major in 2012, the Chief of Police, along with the approval of the Mayor and the City Council members, put into the city's records a proclamation recognizing, congratulating, honoring, and supporting my achievements while serving in the military, and recognized me as a true asset to the city of Monroe and its citizens. This is one of the greatest honors a city employee could ever achieve, and the fact that the entire organization, the city of Monroe, thought enough of me to go through the trouble of drafting the resolution and recognizing me during a city council meeting was very humbling. Chief Gilliard was one of the driving forces behind me receiving this honor, and I will be forever grateful for his dedication to the department, its officers, his support of our military services, but most of all, his guidance and friendship. He and the city of Monroe are very deserving of this award. So, Chief, if you'll come forward. Sergeant Major. The award reads as follows. Office of the Secretary of Defense, Employee Support of the Guard and Reserve, recognizes Brian Gilliard, Monroe Police Department, as a patriotic employer for contributing to national security and protecting liberty and freedom by supporting employee participation in America's National Guard and Reserve Forces. So, Chief, thank you so much.
Sergeant Major, in 2012 you recited the creed. You still know it? Recite it, please, for us.
Non-commissioned officer creed. No one is more professional than I. I'm a non-commissioned officer, leader of soldiers. As a non-commissioned officer, I realize that I'm a member of the time-honored Corps, which is known as the backbone of the Army. I'm proud of the Corps of non-commissioned officers, and will at all times conduct myself so as to bring credit upon the Corps, the military service of my country, regardless of the situation in which I find myself. I will not use my grade or position to obtain pleasure, profit, or personal safety. Competence is my watchword. My two basic responsibilities will always be uppermost in my mind: the accomplishment of my mission and the welfare of my soldiers. I will strive to remain tactically and technically proficient. I'm aware of my role as a non-commissioned officer, and I'll fulfill my responsibilities inherent in that role. All soldiers are entitled to outstanding leadership. I will provide that leadership. I know my soldiers, and I always place their needs above my own. I will communicate consistently with my soldiers and never leave them uninformed. I will be fair and impartial and recommend both reward and punishment. Officers in my unit will have maximum time to accomplish their duties. They will not have to accomplish mine. I will earn their respect and confidence as well as those of my soldiers. I will be fair and impartial and recommend. Thank you. They will not have to accomplish mine. I will exercise initiative by taking the appropriate action in the absence of orders. I will not compromise my integrity nor my moral courage. I will not forget, nor will I allow my comrades to forget, that we are professionals, non-commissioned officers, leaders.
Woohoo! Excellent. Thank you for your service, Sergeant Major. Thank you for your service and all veterans. Thank
Ryan, could you do that?
No, sir. We're in good hands, sir.
you. Give him the Monroe Creed.
Okay, congratulations. That's great.
Sadly, that's the second time that Councilwoman Duncan has put Assistant Police Chief here on the...
Yeah.
I hope he had 30 seconds to think about that before he came in.
I guess he's had two.
She asked me when I started.
I did the same thing to him in 2012, didn't I?
That's right.
That's great. Did a great job, Phil.
Yes, I did.
Congratulations, Chief.
Thank you guys.
Yes.
Item 12, Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization. It's time we.
Oh, go ahead, sir. I'm just making sure that our IT director is able to get the flash drive from.
Okay.
But go ahead, sir.
Mayor, if you will, what we've asked is this to referred to City Council. This is a transportation item that prior to the vote to be held by the Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization. And we understand that they'll be conducting a vote on the 20th, and the vote concerns affirming the managed lane strategy for the Charlotte Metro Regional Transportation Plan. The city has 2 votes, and the total that possibly could be cast is 68, with Charlotte controlling 31 votes. And I understand we have a representative from the Department of Transportation that's very eager to enlighten us on all aspects of managed lane issues.
Not all aspects, will be here all night. Mayor, members of council, Mr. Manager, Mr. Attorney, Madam Clerk. My name is Warren Cooksey. I am the Director of Outreach and Community Affairs for North Carolina Department of Transportation's Division 10, comprising Union, Mecklenburg, Cabarrus, Anson, and Stanley counties. I'm sure you all know the rule of government. The longer a person's title is, the less power he actually has. So my role here tonight is to provide the information that backs up this vote regarding managed lanes in general and their applicability locally. So why we are here is that the governor sent a letter, thanks to some controversy around one of these projects related to a contract. The governor has requested that the Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization either reaffirm its current strategy for the Charlotte metropolitan region or reverse that previous decision and set in motion the necessary steps to create a new regional transportation plan. So I am here today to talk about 2 major things. Managed lanes, which are sometimes called express lanes or optional toll lanes, still fairly new in the long history of transportation, so we're working out the name. And then take you through the local development of the strategy that led us to where we are today. So to start off with, congestion on highways. That's the problem. That's the challenge that we face. That first picture there is a fairly familiar sight in metropolitan areas all across the country. You build a standard interstate highway, 2 lanes in each direction. During certain times of day, it begins to look like that. Traffic is crawling, it's stop and go. We perversely call that rush hour, when nobody's really getting anywhere. Traditionally, the engineering response was more capacity, build another lane. But what we have found is that in metropolitan areas in general, and particularly those that are growing greater than average, like this area, that capacity fills up much faster than we anticipated, and we're back to gridlock. We're back to stop and go traffic in this case, 3 lanes instead of 2. Where this ends, well, this is from China, and it's 10 lanes in each direction. They still had a 10-day traffic jam. I assure you, we don't have the room to build anything like that in this region. But I like to show it to demonstrate that more lanes just isn't the answer, is what history and studies have shown us in these growing areas. There are real costs to what is called the fundamental law of road congestion, that congestion returns oftentimes faster than you anticipated in a growing area. In this region, we have well over 500,000 commuters every day. And according to the Texas Transportation Institute, which keeps track of these sorts of statistics, congestion costs the average Charlotte area commuter $22.40 an hour. That's a function of roughly $960 per year in extra gasoline burned just sitting in traffic, and about 43 hours a year sitting in traffic, not moving anywhere. So you divide those 2, you get roughly $22.40. Multiply that across all average Charlotte commuters, and you get an impact of more than $450 million a year. Regionally, there's a greater risk too, because all that congestion isn't good for our air quality. And although this region took a great step last year in actually attaining air quality requirements, we're still under maintenance, we're still being watched, and if our air quality gets too bad, we will lose all our federal highway funds. Congestion certainly does not help with air quality. These are the challenges of congestion. And traditional engineering responses of adding capacity, much as I love the engineers I work with, hasn't done it. So we turn to another means. We manage the demand for the lane to match that supply, because congestion simply means there are too many cars for too little asphalt. This is a schematic of what's proposed for the I-77 North Corridor over the causeway of Lake Norman to construct express lanes, optional toll lanes, managed lanes, again, the terms vary. Separate lanes within a highway corridor in which drivers can choose to pay a variable toll for a more reliable, quicker trip in that corridor. That's the key to this. This isn't about using tolls to pay for the project first and foremost. It's about using an economic technique to match demand and supply. Econ 101 teaches that when you've got demand and you've got supply, it is the price that reconciles the two. You stick around in Econ 101 classes, they show you another graph of what happens if there's a fixed supply, like an asphalt lane on a highway. Well, when there's a fixed supply and demand varies, price goes up when demand is great, price goes down when demand is lower. That's the theory and practice of optional toll lanes or express lanes. I got to go back to the engineering, though, because that's who I work for. Found this graph, and it is a simplification, I confess, of a variety of traffic flow diagrams that you'll find in traffic engineering textbooks and studies. It conveys 3 dimensions of information. On the vertical axis, you see speed in miles per hour, 0 to 70, because nobody's going faster than 70. That's our maximum posted speed limit. Horizontal axis, hourly vehicles per lane, exactly what it says. You pick a lane, you pick a spot, you start counting, and an hour later, the number of vehicles you've counted is how many vehicles per hour in that lane have gone past. The 3rd dimension is in that curve, and that curve is tracking the volume of demand or the traffic density in the lane. The green area we like. Actually, you're looking at it there, so I'll gesture that way. We like the green area. That's when the volume of demand is within capacity, well within capacity, and traffic speeds along nicely at the posted speed limit. But as more and more cars get into the lane and the density increases, we get to that yellow area where people start slowing down. You want a little time to react because distances between cars are getting a little closer, but you're still in a free flow situation. Interestingly enough, if you look at how that yellow section works, you're below the posted speed limit. You're at about 50 to 45 miles an hour. But note that this is where the lane has its maximum efficiency. At those speeds, we're processing the maximum number of vehicles per hour per lane that the lane can handle. But as more and more cars seek to get into the lane, it's 5 o'clock, 5:30, then we start breaking down. The lane is oversaturated. We get into that red zone. Traffic is moving slower and slower, and as a result, we're processing fewer vehicles per hour per lane. The lane is operating inefficiently because there is too much demand. That's the problem. Express lanes, by providing a variable toll that's demand-based, wipes out the red zone on the curve. There isn't a breakdown of a lane when it's managed by tolls. We keep the lane free-flowing, oftentimes at its maximum efficiency, keeping traffic flowing by federal requirement at no less than 45 miles an hour. And there's sensors along the way to keep track of that. As speed starts slowing down towards 45, the tolls go up because we've reached efficiency of the lane. As the speeds start picking up, the tolls can go down to encourage more people to use the lane to be more efficient and not have it break down. That, in a nutshell, is the theory and practice of express lanes. We can do this because of modern technology. Couldn't have done this 30 years ago, 40 years ago. You've got to have the ability to track the speeds. You put signs up that show the toll that is expected of a driver well before the decision point. Typically about a mile before an entry point arrives for an express lane is when you see the sign saying, if you get into the express lane, this is the toll that you would choose to pay to save travel time. Furthermore, these are done with gantries and cameras and transponders, much like this one here. Get one of these, put it on your car, and you go through a gantry that reads the transponder, charges your account, whatever that toll is that you saw before making the choice. Traffic continues to flow. There's no stopping at a toll plaza. There's no stopping to throw coins into a booth or anything. It's handled all electronically. That's why more and more we see these express lanes being chosen to add capacity on busy interstates in the highest populated areas of the country. This map, which I blatantly stole from the Washington Department of Transportation, shows not only where the stars not only indicate where the express lanes projects are, but they divided the country by county roughly in half by population. The gray counties contain half the U.S. population. The blue counties contain half the population. Note how few blue counties are. Those are the highest populated counties nationwide. Note the correlation between express lanes for capacity and high density population and areas of rapid growth. You get areas like Chicago in the Northeast. They had their growth. They've got a well-matured transportation system. They have a lot of pure toll roads and toll bridges. But when you're talking about adding capacity in automobile-centric areas, like you see in this map, express lanes more and more are the choice. There are roughly 27 of these projects in operation currently, another 17 or so under construction. We certainly qualify in this region as a high-growth area. The Metropolitan Transportation Plan for the Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization's area, which is just Iredell, Mecklenburg, and Union counties. Not Cabarrus, not Gaston, they're growing too, but Union, Mecklenburg, Iredell, looking at this kind of growth. 777,800 more people expected by 2040. That's almost the population of Charlotte itself. Moving here, and they're not going to bring any asphalt with them. They're not going to break off anywhere they came from and bring it with them. We've got to provide ways for the folks we have today and for the folks we'll have in the future to be able to get around. That was the theory behind express lanes locally, because just to let you know, Councilmember Anthony's seen how this works out in CRTPO orientation. There's a partnership in developing projects between the local metropolitan planning organization created by federal law out of the jurisdictions in the greater Charlotte area there that you see. Iredell, with Charlotte is the major city in the middle, Iredell, Mecklenburg, and of course Union counties. 27 voting members, 68 total votes, created by federal law to create transportation planning strategies, plans, and projects for this three-county region. Over on the state side, we have the Department of Transportation, created by the General Assembly, to carry out these projects, to identify how they get funded, to rank them by priority with the available funds from state and federal sources, and to deliver them. Sign the contracts, get the projects done based on what is set up by, what is asked for by local transportation planning authorities. So this local response to growth and congestion actually began here in 2007. I was the Charlotte Mecklenburg Planning Commissioner at the time and attended the very first stakeholder meeting for what was known as the Fast Lane Study. This alphabet soup of government agencies, mainly led by Charlotte Department of Transportation in its role as supporter of what was then known as the Mecklenburg Union Metropolitan Planning Organization, began this three-phase study of major corridors in the region to see where could we apply this technique of express lanes, of optional toll lanes, to provide additional capacity with reliable travel times. They started, as you see in phase one, with roughly 330 miles in the region, narrowed it down through phase two, and by phase three it was apparent that I-77 through Mecklenburg County, the southern section of I-485, and US 74 from uptown Charlotte to I-485 were the best candidates to apply this technique to add capacity to the regional highway system. This led to numerous key decisions by the Metropolitan Planning Organization. First, in its incarnation as the Mecklenburg Union Metropolitan Planning Organization, and then following that as the Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization. And ordinarily, I don't put this much text on a slide, but this is history, and I don't know a good way to show votes by pictures. So this began in 2010. There were 3 specific votes that occurred during that year, all of them unanimous. And the key ones were adopting the use of that fast lane study to develop projects. And you'll note that the MPO added NC-16 to the list. That wasn't one that came out of the study, but they thought NC-16 was worth looking at. And specifically voting to support the addition of an I-77 managed lane project in the Transportation Improvement Program. The next year, there were 4 unanimous votes on the topic of managed lanes, including adding a specific project to convert the existing high-occupancy vehicle lanes on I-77 to managed lanes, the optional toll lane concept, and as you can see, studying additional optional toll lanes, not just converting what was there, but adding to it. By 2012, 4 unanimous votes occurred, and the highlights being supporting a project for optional toll lanes on the southern section of 485. That's the first time we have a vote on that particular project. And then adopting this I-77 policy statement, which is the first voted on adoption of acknowledging that the scope of I-77 was so great that a public-private partnership would probably be needed to be able to finance the proposal. In 2010 and 2011, attempts were made to build the managed lanes on I-77 through traditional state funding, and it just wasn't there. Tiger grant was applied for by to the federal government. It wasn't achieved. So by this point, the MPO is looking at the NCDOT's recommendation, candidly, a public-private partnership to deliver this project. By 2013, we have 4 unanimous votes, including setting optional toll lanes on Independence Boulevard, the US 74 section from Uptown to 45, and the key one, approving, and I've pulled the direct quotes from the minutes, a project to widen I-77 from Charlotte to Mooresville with optional toll lanes, managed lanes, express lanes, under a public-private partnership. That was the vote that told NCDOT, go forth, do your job, find a private partner, sign a contract, get this project done. By 2014, which is coincidentally enough the year the contract was signed, the MPO unanimously approved the project list for submission for scoring for the next round of Transportation Improvement Program, including the I-77 South project, again, making sure the I-45 South project qualified for funding, and the US 74 projects. That was adopted unanimously, as was the 2040 Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which I've referred to already with its population increase figures, which was adopted unanimously with optional toll lanes as a congestion management strategy. Then last year, 3 votes to wrap up our walk through history. There was the approval of the use of $144.5 million in bonus allocation that came from the I-77 Managed Lanes project to various projects in the corridor. There was a vote to preserve the wide paved shoulders on I-45 from I-77 to Johnston Road, which were built in anticipation of becoming toll lanes in the future, and the MPO reinforced that strategy in a vote just last year. And finally, in terms of votes related to the managed lane strategy, if you've been counting, roughly the 22nd vote, was adopting the FY 2016 to 2025 Transportation Improvement Program with these managed lanes projects in it to go forward. And what we get from that is this network of optional toll lanes with $1.7 billion currently committed to developing them and building them out over the next, well, it's actually more than 10 years at this point. You can see that the I-77 North project is scheduled to come online in late 2018. It'll be preceded by the starter project on US 74, a 6-mile stretch from 277 out to Wallace Lane, converting the existing bus lanes to express lanes. That should be open in 2017. 45 southern section, that we're looking to let that contract in this summer, which means they can be operational by 2019. The additional US 74 project, continuing managed lanes from Wallace Lane out to 45. That's a little further out, but the funding has been committed in the State Transportation Improvement Program for operation by 2025. The I-77 South project, it's a bit bigger. It requires a little more time. It is estimated to be a $1.2 billion project on its own, but at present, $275 million is committed for it, for right-of-way acquisition in 2024. That, members of the Monroe Council, is the understanding of managed lanes, the history of it locally, and I hope it was a sufficiently brief but informative presentation, and I'm open to questions.
So what are the ramifications of a no vote?
All righty. Consequences of choosing a new strategy, because that's essentially what we're talking about here, is abandoning the managed lane strategy that was begun in 2010, and choosing something new. Well, of course, all the managed lane projects go away, about $1.7 billion worth. If this strategy is abandoned, there's no project defined to widen I-77 to the north. There's no project defined to add additional reliable travel time capacity to US 74. There's no project defined to add additional capacity with travel time reliability to 45, and there's no project defined for the southern section of I-77. The MPO will have to go back to the drawing board and create new projects. Now, once they do that, they'll have to submit them under state law through the Strategic Transportation Investments Act for scoring and applicability of funding. The next window to submit projects, as you can see in the next section, opens in 2017, and that will be basically a 1.5-year long process of crunching numbers for statewide projects and regional projects and division projects that will result in a new state transportation improvement program adopted in 2019. The first 5 years of a transportation improvement program are always for funding pre-existing committed projects. They've reached the point of ripeness, so to speak, where there's money available, all the studies have been done, we're ready to go to construction. So that means for new projects, the earliest right-of-way window, acquisition for right-of-way, would be in 2025, and it typically takes 2 years or so to acquire right-of-way before you start construction on the project. Then construction can take anywhere from 2 to 3 years. So conceivably, we're looking at 2030 being the first time any replacement project would be able to be functional. Those are the consequences of changing the strategy at this stage.
So we have 2 votes, is that correct?
That is
And-
correct.
That is correct.
And Ms. Anthony, you're the person that represents us,
That's correct.
and,
Okay.
is that right?
That's correct.
So I guess, how are we
I have a question.
voting?
What are the other entities that have votes in Union County? What are their votes going to be? Do you have
We have them referenced.
We have those, Councilmember Jordan, going from the list, Indian Trail, Marshville, Marvin, let's see.
Monroe, Stallings.
Yep,
Union
Monroe,
County.
Stallings and Weddington have already voted. Wesley Chapel and Wingate. I believe we had them all.
Union County does something.
Union County has 2, and they're actually making the decision this evening.
What about the others? Do you have how the others are have decided to vote?
All we know right now, Councilmember Jordan, is that Weddington and Stallings they had 1 vote each, and they both voted to support the current plan, to reaffirm.
And Mecklenburg County also 31 votes for.
Charlotte, actually. Charlotte has 31 votes. Mecklenburg County's 2 votes were used to oppose the plan. So right now, we're at least aware of 33 votes in favor. I'll defer to Mr. Cooksian if the Board of Transportation has advised on the votes that Division 10 and Division 12 have, if they've made a decision. But right now, we're aware of 33 votes to support, at least 2 votes in opposition, and then it is unclear where the others are, but some are clearly going to be opposing, such as Huntersville and other places that have expressed opposition. So perhaps many in northern Mecklenburg County, but at the end of the day, the city of Charlotte controls about, I think, 45 to 46% of the votes, and then we are one of the few entities that has 2 votes.
I was primarily interested in our neighbors here in Union County and and how they may be leaning with their votes.
Well, with the traffic situation on I-77, and I and many of you have driven it in that area, and what I see there, if something is not improved in another year or 2, it's gonna look like that China highway, is it not?
Not with as many lanes, but it will
No, I'm not
certainly
getting
have
any
some
lanes,
difficulty moving. Yes,
It's gonna
sir.
be gridlock pretty much, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Well, it's gridlock now during specific times of day.
And so what you're telling us, it'll be 2030 before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Under existing transportation legislation in terms of how to rank, prioritize, and fund projects.
Okay.
It was observed, somebody pointed this out, the annual construction budget for NCDOT is approximately $1.5 billion. I don't think the Powerball winner was going to give us an extra year.
I would say one thing, you really made a nice presentation,
Thank you.
and I don't see that there's
Any other questions?
one way to move forward on this. That was a good job.
Any other questions?
I have a question of Ms. Anthony. I wanted to know is how you were leaning towards voting. Did you want to have a vote or talk with us, or?
Well, it's council's discretion. I would lean towards supporting it.
I would agree to that.
Okay. Yeah. All right, do I have any other questions? Do I have a motion?
I move that we support what Ms. Anthony just said.
And I second it.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's nice. Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
the presentation.
Let's see.
Good job. Appreciate you coming
I
down.
lost it. There it is.
Item 13, request funding for Central Academy of Technology. Okay. Is anyone here from CATA? We recognize you at this time. If you'd like to come to the podium. Kind of give us overview or whatever.
I am Todd Hitchpath, a proud parent from Cata, and the theater department there this is their 3rd state championship in 5 years, and so they're moving on to the Southeast Regional 10-state competition, and hoping this would be 2 years ago they won the Southeast Regional Theater competition, and so hopefully this will be the 2nd in 3 years. And so to make that trip, the good part about it, it's only to Greensboro, and so they're just needing funding to make that trip and participate in the Southeast competition, and so we're just asking for help in that. Yeah.
Did we fund this in previous years
Yes.
too?
Did we fund it through outside agencies?
No, I don't understand how that works.
Larry, do we have anything?
The information that staff forwarded to me is that past funding came through outside agency. I'm just not clear maybe how it got to outside agency, but in current fiscal year, $3,000 went to Band Boosters. 2015, $3,000 went to Band Boosters. In 2014, $3,000 went to Band Boosters and $3,000 to our department. For a total of $6,000 and nothing in 2013, and in 2012, $3,000 from contingency. So total about approximately $15,000 from
The Band Boosters, does that go to Central Academy?
Yeah, it's all cabinet.
Okay, it's all capital, okay.
The Band Boosters, some of that would not be Monroe?
All this is for cabinet.
Oh, really?
So we've given Cata how much in 2 years?
In 2 years, 6,000.
Okay.
Current fiscal year and last fiscal year, since 2012, 15,000.
And this has gone through outside agencies or not?
I'm not sure how it got to outside agency, but it was funded through outside agency budget.
When do they meet next?
I believe it'll be on the committee's next agenda.
Have they got an application in now
I don't know.
to the outside agency?
When do y'all's trip?
It's the 1st week of March.
Oh, well, we're meeting next first week in February, right?
The outside agency committee applications are due by January 29th. I'm not sure if we've received one from CATA yet, but we'll be bringing those to the General Services Committee for their meeting on February 4th. And we'll have a packet of everybody's applications emailed out before that meeting to those up to everyone.
My understanding is CATA has made requests through the outside agency before, is that correct? But you haven't, not this year.
They do have $3,000 through outside agency for the current fiscal year 16. Out of the $15,000 over the last 5 years, 3 submissions of $3,000 were through outside agency, and 2 of them were special requests brought before council and appropriated out of the city manager's discretionary account.
So there's 3,000 in the outside agency for this budget?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I have a question, Mayor. Where did that request come from? The 3,000 that you have requested, is it coming from the theater group or is it coming from another entity at CATA?
I think it's all the theater group, but I'm not positive. I have to clarify that.
Because the other, you said it was going to the Band Boosters or someone like that. So I want to make sure that we don't have, 3,000 being requested from the Band Boosters and then having another 3,000 being requested from the theater group. I just want to try to figure out what it is what requests we're getting from CATA.
Well, we can put it in for the next
May I move
meeting.
that we defer this to the General Services and also make sure he's able to fill out, unless Cata's already got one in, for the 3,000 duly.
I'm not sure who's submitted so far.
Wait.
Okay, you'll want to keep in mind, the outside agency funding that you'll be looking at in the coming weeks is for the next budget year. This gentleman is wanting monies to attend something this March.
But we gave $3,000 already.
What it's been spent on, I couldn't tell you, but all I know is that this next round of meetings will be covering the next fiscal year, not.
Did we give 3,000 to, is this Mr. Robinson's group?
Yes.
Did we give 3,000 last year for Mr. Robinson?
Mm-hmm.
At least the best in the state of North Carolina, I'll tell you that. I would be hard pressed. Maybe we need to get a better handle on it, but I would be hard pressed not to.
Let me ask a question. The county schools, or the county giving you anything? Not county school, you know what I'm talking about, the county commissioners, yeah.
I don't know.
Have there been a
What about the
request?
school board?
They were just recognized by the school board, and that I'm not 100% on it. If they're,
Let me ask a
I don't.
Are you aware whether or not a request has been made of the school board?
No, because this need has just come up because they just won the state competition.
Let me ask this a couple of questions.
I'm not aware.
When do you,
We're not aware of.
when you're trying to put together budgets for a trip like this, I know that you have timelines that come up on you so that you can make, especially when you're dealing with people's children. And that's what you're talking about doing, is moving people's children from this location to different location.
Right.
And I know that you're coming up on budgets and timelines that you have to have some kind of indication on whether or not you're going to be able to do it, or you're just basically going to end up scratching it. Mayor, I'd like to know if the city manager has discretionary monies in his budget that would cover the $3,000 that they're asking for. Can you tell me that?
There's funds there, but I've tried to earmark those for other purposes. Number one. Number two, I'm not inclined to use the manager's discretionary fund. Philanthropic entities, you have an outside agency budget for that, and I would recommend to the board that you defer and refer items such as this to the outside agency process and not for the manager's discretionary.
I can appreciate that, Mr. Manager, but those discretionary monies were put there for, by the city council for purposes that have been designated by the city council. And it has been stated, we've used them for purposes like this before. So, I don't have a problem with it going to outside agency committee, but.
If it helps, because they just won the state, it's not something that it has the luxury of projected. You don't have a lot of time to plan for this. The budget for the Southeast had to be put together rather quickly because in December is, end of November, December is when they won the state. So it's just, they didn't have it's not like they have a lot of time to put something together before.
But we have a school board member here that might be able to address if they have been before y'all, have they?
Well, Mayor, I'm going to make the motion that we accommodate these young folks in the same manner that we're going to accommodate Monroe High for winning the state championship, and make a disbursement of $3,000 out of the manager's discretionary funds, and so that they can go ahead and have that to plan their trip with.
I don't have a problem funding it at all. But we drain and we drain and we drain the manager's discretionary fund. He's got some funds left, and he spoke to me and I spoke to him about it. And he's got some or most of that earmarked already. If we're gonna do it, of course, we'll do what the council wants to do. But I wonder if we can't find it somewhere other than that, if he's got most of that earmarked.
Mayor, I think
he tells me.
you may need to leave. Councilmember Jordan made a motion. There's not been an opportunity to second it. Thank you.
Okay, he made a motion.
Here's a motion, and Councilmember Anthony just seconded.
I beg your pardon.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, I have a motion and a second to fund $3,000 out of the manager's discretionary fund for CATA. I have a motion. Any other question? Any comment?
Yeah, I'd like to say that, while we're very pleased and proud that you've done this, I think this is great. I mean, there's other ways I think that we can have some funds. Just because we've always done it this way doesn't mean that we need to continue to do it this way, because the manager does not want to use this discretionary funding for this. I think we need to step back and say, how can we go forward in the future? when we're talking about the high schools, the middle school, and our school here in the city, we need to work with the county, with the commissioners, and also with the school board and find out, what are they doing? We need to work together to support our schools. But in this instance, the manager doesn't want to use his discretionary funding, so I'm going to go with the manager on this. But go ahead.
Call for question, Mayor.
All right, any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor of taking? All right, 3, all opposed? Oh, how many?
That was, I think, Mr. Anderson that raised his hand, but.
How'd you vote, Mr. Anderson? Opposed. All right, that's 4. That's 4-3. I'll make a suggestion that, and of course we'll go with the council, send it to the finance committee, as Lynn started to say a little bit ago.
I would recommend that it go back to our committee, as Ms. Duncan chairs that, and we can take a look at it there. And that way we don't address Larry's discretionary.
And this is coming up in March, is that what I heard you say?
Yes.
Well, we got time to send it back to that committee. I'd encourage us to do it.
And I think if any of us has any money left in our discretionary
Maybe
amount,
we could do
in
that.
our own funds, we can get together and certainly do something in that respect.
Thank you.
I think that's
Anything else,
something we
sir?
need to look at.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate it. And congratulations on what you folks do out there. Y'all do a great job out there. And we do appreciate that. Okay, item 14, public comment period.
Mayor, we just want a clarification. You're referring it to the General Services Committee, is that correct?
That's correct.
The Finance Committee no longer exists.
Yeah,
We'll come up with something.
I think that's what Lynn was trying to say a while ago.
Okay.
It is public comment period time, but before that, I'd just like to say, Ms. Harrell, we're glad to see you here representing the school board. It's very good, it's very nice, always good to see you and have you. Come back anytime and be with us. Thank you so much. You do a great job, and we appreciate what you do. You got a hard job, but you do a great job.
Yes, you do.
Thank you, ma'am. At this time, I have,
Mayor?
yes,
Just for clarification, did we have a motion and a second and vote, or do we need that for this to be referred back to the General Services Committee?
I don't think we have to vote on that.
I will defer to the manager and the staff lead on that. If the manager believes that you have instructed him and he has a consensus of council to refer it back to General Services, he may do that. If he feels he needs direction, then you could make that motion.
I understand the consensus is for it to be considered by the General Services Committee.
Okay. Go ahead. All right, I have Robert speak. You come forward, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. My name's Robert Yanchek at 513 Everett Street, and I see it was approved on the consent agenda for the public hearing for the property at 501 Charles Street. And the only thing I want to say is I encourage everyone to drive past that property before it's rezoned from the residential to the conditional district. My understanding is that property is wanting to become a duplex again since it sat vacant. There's some reasons that some of those codes were changed to prevent property from falling back into a duplex property, and I just encourage you guys to drive by and just look at it and get an overview of what we're dealing with in that part of the city and why we're trying to revert it back to individual single-family dwellings instead of changing it to the...
That was 501 what?
It's 501 Charles Street.
I think staff's got that, I heard, I think, go ahead.
I just encourage everyone to, if they get a chance to drive by that area and just see what we're dealing with. That's all I had to say.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Mr. Duncan, sir.
Yeah, on the agenda, Steve Duncan, 611 Lancaster. On the agenda tonight, I saw we were considering some credit card convenience fees. And I bring to the council's attention, according to our calendar, this is 2016. Okay. I looked on TV tonight, and Happy Days isn't on. And back in the 80s, credit cards were convenience. Today, they are a necessity. They're a way of life. And there's a lot of folks out there who use the credit card because they can't travel. They can't get from here to there. But they can either call in online, or they can call in. They can get online to pay their city fees. There's a lot of the elderly out there who have difficulties. Now, if we're going to consider using credit card convenience fees, again, today credit cards are not a convenience; they're necessities. And personally, right now, I don't have $1 in my pocket. I use credit cards for everything. And I suggest that the city of Monroe should not consider convenience fees for credit cards anymore, because you pay everything by online, and they don't charge you a fee to pay for a credit by utilizing your credit cards any longer. We have. I can remember it wasn't too long ago, that it took a long time for us to start taking online fees. And, I pay online now, and I pay that convenience fee to utilize an online system. However, to raise a convenience fee or include convenience fees for credit cards, it's not viable these days. In 2016, this is, like I said, this is a way of life. This is what we look at. People who are moving into Monroe, they look at the ways that we can that they can reduce their costs. Monroe's I've said it before. Monroe's a great town, but we need to bring some of our administration and some of the ways we look in the fees. We need to bring them up to date, because younger folks don't think about a credit card, needing a convenience fee for using a credit card to pay their city fees. So please consider this whenever we look at how we can recoup some of the funds. If we have a vendor that's charging us a convenience fee or a charge for everybody to use credit cards, we need to look for a different vendor. So a lot of the people these days are not rich. They're not even well off, but they can use their debit card or their credit card. So again, please consider this whenever we start looking at convenience fees for credit cards. Thank you very much.
Mr. Manager, when you were doing the consent agenda, did you, I may have missed it, did you say how much the city had to pay for use of credit cards?
Yes, ma'am. Last year, we experienced approximately $115,000 in expenses. We're beyond that last month and forecasted anticipated cost of $250,000. My understanding is most, if not all, credit card companies charge a convenience fee or transaction fee to the business. In this case, we're the business, for the ability to use that in payment of a service, in this case utilities. So we are experiencing an expense to offer that as a convenience.
So we're spending about $250,000 to allow our residents to use,
for fiscal year end,
to use credit cards. Well, it's either raise taxes or do something if we're having to pay $250,000 to allow people to use credit cards. So, okay, thank you.
All right. Anyone else here who would like to speak in the public comment period?
I have a question, Mayor, if nobody knows. I see that Monroe High, we're getting ready to do this banquet for them. What's the city's participation in that?
Defer to Pete,
Okay.
asked him to organize and take the lead for them.
What exactly are you asking?
For dollars, how much?
Roughly to $2,200 for the food for roughly 300 people at all the players, the coaches, school administration that are involved with it. School board members have been invited. Central school staff have been invited, as well as, again, players and their parents for the event.
Okay, that's with food, so that includes the caterer and its cost and everything?
Yes, sir. It's South Piedmont Community College, and South Piedmont Community College is donating the use of the facility, and they're supplying the food for us.
Okay, there was some mention at one time at, maybe some participation with trying to get rings. Has the city done anything in that regard?
Not to my knowledge, sir.
Okay, so where is the $2,200 coming from?
I believe out of the manager's fund. I don't know at this time, sir. I'll defer to the manager.
So the manager had money set aside for this, but for the other events just don't measure up.
No, if they win, I'm sure that we'll do something comparable. We need to be consistent, so I'm sure we'll do something comparable. We need to revisit this whole thing. I agree with that.
I just wanted to, you've said what I needed to hear said. Thank you. I just wanted that for the record. Thank you.
Anything else? You're done. I have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? We're out of here. Thank you very much. Mr. Farrell, thanks again for coming.